Right, nobody wants this season 2 is like straight cheeks, all right? I could have had the title to this YouTube video being like, nobody wants this season 2. But the issue is that doesn't quite work because for the most part, everyone seemed to like nobody wants this season 1, including myself, all right? I didn't love the ending. To be honest, the ending of season 1 felt like kind of a nightmare. But aside from that, most people, myself included, did really like season 1, but season 2 does not have the sauce at all. I found this repetitive. I found this annoying. I thought the characters were not intentionally incredibly unlikable, all right? Compared to something like White Lotus, where the characters are intentionally meant to be kind of arrogant and obtuse and ignorant, right? The characters in Nobody Wants This Season 2 are clearly meant to be people we are rooting for, people that we are meant to get behind and care about, but I found them incredibly unlikable, incredibly shallow, but worst of all, I found there was no palpable chemistry like there was in Season 1. That's kind of the biggest issue here, is it has like no riz. There's no other way to say this, right? Like Season 2 just has no charisma, it's no fun. It's one of those shows that you're watching where you're kind of just sitting there the whole time being like, what am I watching and why? They repeat so many things from the first season, and in fact, the ending of season 2 is borderline insulting. We basically go on this up, down, sideways adventure just to end up in the exact same place, and it's just really quite a shame. Adam Brody seems frankly disinterested in this role, and they give him barely anything to do. I also found the exploration of his faith and the religion of Judaism in general kind of lackluster and lame, all right? Like, it is absolutely insane to me that Kristen Bell is a 45-year-old woman. I think she's playing a character that's like mid-30s, right? But even so, this mid-30s woman isn't aware that Shabbat is something that happens every week and like goes on this random tangent about how crazy it is. Like, I know this is we're meant to be leaning into like, oh my God, like two worlds coming together, an agnostic woman and a rabbi, all right? Like, I know they're trying to lean into like the differences between them, but I'm like, are we serious? Like, you haven't heard of this? And on top of that, she's like surprised that they're asking to put her phone away. I'm like, dude, like, even if it wasn't a religious dinner, like, you're at dinner with your boyfriend's family, put your fucking phone away. Like, there's just so much of the writing here in this season is clearly going for, like, dare I say, like, a TikTok audience or something. I feel like so much of this season is completely infantilizing its characters, and it was driving me absolutely nuts. These are mid-30s people, all right? These are 35-year-old people that are acting, frankly, like 13-year-olds. I mean, even my younger siblings wouldn't act as juvenile as the characters in this show would. Like, not at all. It's just constantly, you know, like, there's a point where they key someone's Tesla, and, like, look, on paper, that Tesla did have it coming, all right? Like, that Tesla almost hit like a baby, but the issue is they don't even do it in a way that the Tesla owner is going to get back to the Tesla and be like, oh, that was punishment for, you know, me speedy around the parking lot. Like, they don't carve in, like, watch where you're going, dickhead. They just, like, scratch his car. And it's just, I don't know, like, I really did not like this season. And again, repetitive and also just really strange plot lines. There's this whole plot line where Sasha's mother basically gets in his head and is like, yo, you want to have a kid. So then for, like, a 20-minute section of this show, Sasha and his wife are trying to get pregnant, and then they just drop it instantly. And that's a lot of this show. There's another moment, right, where they set up this idea that Morgan, all right, Joanne's sister, Morgan, initially she's trying to get the number, or she's trying to get this guy to get her number, right? She's really sad that they're at this dinner and this guy didn't seem interested in her and didn't want to get her number. And she's like, oh my God. And then next episode, I shit you not, she's dating her therapist, right? And at first I'm like, okay, so the point of this is that it's going to be out of nowhere. And as a result, Joanne is like, oh my God, this is out of nowhere. But then they have this like big argument and this big monologue. And as Morgan is chewing out Joanne and being like, you never pay attention to me. You've never even asked if I've had a boyfriend. They start playing like sad string music. So you're meant to be on Morgan's side. This isn't meant to be funny. This isn't meant to be Morgan being delusional. Morgan's meant to be the good guy in this situation. And it's this moment where I realized I am completely out of step with this show. Because as an audience, that is completely out of left field. All right? Like, factually speaking, literally, like, yesterday, she was sad that, you know, this guy wasn't getting her number, and now she's dating her therapist. An insane thing in itself. But the show clearly wants us to be like, oh, look, Joanne's been so swept up in her own relationship, she hasn't even noticed what's going on. I'm like, how did she have a chance? And that's the thing, right? I know a lot of people are going to be in my comments being like, well, maybe that's the point. Maybe this character's meant to be like that, or maybe this is meant to be fun. It's not meant to be taken seriously. But dare I say that I think we deserve more from our shows, all right? If we keep watching shows that are this inconsistent and clunky with their writing, I think, you know, Netflix is just going to keep making more of it. Like, I miss, you know, I want more adolescence. I want more really well-made Netflix shows. I don't want these shows that are designed to be second screen viewing. Yes, this show is fine if you're, like, doing your taxes and vaguely paying attention in the background. But for me, watching it and paying attention to it, I could not keep up with what the writers were doing. And oftentimes these characters just feel completely at the whim of whatever the writers want them to do for that episode. You have this insane arc where out of nowhere, Joanne's mother wants to become Jewish. There is a complete character assassination for Adam Brody's Noah character at a certain point. This guy that seems to be pretty emotionally intelligent and switched on, especially in season 1, right? Like, he's pretty awesome. In season 2, he just decides to get Joanne the same necklace he got his ex, and I honestly couldn't buy it. I wasn't buying what they were selling. It wasn't set up well, and, you know, like, it's just a completely clunky, strange show. But the big issue here is, frankly, I found Joanne and Morgan just incredibly unlikable. I found their problems really juvenile and annoying. I found Joanne's attitude around anything that isn't something she could directly relate to really quite ignorant and arrogant. And again, completely fine if that was the intention. Completely fine if this was like a White Lotus sort of show where it's intentionally lambasting these sort of characters. But I think she's meant to be, like, relatable and quirky. And frankly, I don't think ignorance is that relatable and quirky. You know, they'll be at, like, a paid for pasta making course, and they're complaining that, like, they can't binge drink wine until later, and it's just like, what are we doing? Morgan is a character that is completely assassinated this season, like, completely off the rails, cartoonishly over the top. Like, I was struggling to connect with all of her plot lines, completely all over the place. I don't know who was getting invested in this therapist plot line. I will say, if I have to give the show credit, I do really find Sasha and Esther, to an extent, particularly in season 2, rather compelling characters. I think, even though some of it was really rushed, especially around that whether they're having a baby or not plotline, but I will say their marital struggles that were kind of, like, brought to the surface because of this seemingly innocent but also maybe couldn't have been innocent Sasha and Morgan friendship, right? The relationship problems that come to the surface between Esther and Sasha, I thought were actually really interesting and quite compelling. I did enjoy that. I thought Sasha is a really well-realized character and also a pretty good performance. I thought Esther was a lot more nuanced and complicated this season. I think it is a hard moment if you are in a relationship that you kind of rushed into and you realize, oh, like, I don't know if this is my person. And I thought the depth that was there was decent. As well, on top of, I thought Sasha's crash out was kind of good. All right. There's a moment where he's at, like, a lunch table and they're playing this card game where they're meant to all be honest, and he just cracks it at everyone. And I thought that was an example of the writers actually cooking. We saw multiple times throughout this season Sasha would try and talk with multiple people about his problems, and they kind of ignored him and focused on their own things. I'm like, that's how you do it. Whereas with Morgan's crash outs, you're like, where is this coming from? What's going on? And just so much of this season was me scratching my head being like, huh? What? Why? Just really strange plot lines. And yeah, I can't stress enough how unlikable I found Joanne. And I also thought the initial conflict, or the kind of conflict thrust of this season, wasn't particularly compelling, well fleshed out, or well thought out, dare I say. The whole season I was sort of sitting there being like, okay, well, you are kind of dating a rabbi, you want to get married to a rabbi, like you're probably going to have to convert. And then I was like, okay, maybe on a deeper level, what they're going for here is it's not as simple as just doing the 6-month conversion. Like she really wants to feel it and believe it in her heart. And I'm like, okay. But then the season kind of ends and someone just comes up to her and goes, you seem pretty Jewish to me. This seems pretty good to me. Tick, tick, tick. And then she runs after Adam Brody, to which we get the same conclusion we got at the end of season 1. And I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's nuts to me. Now, to give credit to the show again, I did really enjoy Joanne's parents. I think both of them are kind of well-realized characters. I think the dad is pretty funny. I think the mum's pretty funny too. I thought the whole section where they are like running off to a little sauna to have like a private family discussion. I think the idea of a sauna being used as a storage unit, it got a little chuckle out of me. But yeah, I think Joanne is given the most screen time and in theory the most depth, but I just think the combination of the performance and the writing here and just how maybe accidentally ignorant and obtuse the character is presented makes her ultimately incredibly unlikable. And dare I say, like, it's just giving major Karen energy. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but I just was completely disconnected with this character, and not in a way where I found it kind of bold and compelling that like a lead character is this unlikable. I was just like, what do the writers think they're doing compared to what I'm getting? Because this is crazy. But I really was disappointed with Noah's character this season. He frankly feels like kind of just an accessory to Joanne's character. He feels very one-dimensional, and I actually thought the exploration of his faith was pretty lame. Honestly, I feel like I've had deeper conversations with my friends about this stuff than what this show was putting out there. And I know not everything needs to be super heady and super intellectual, but I actually think it's really a shame how much this show has infantilized its characters, written them like they're like 13-year-olds. Because I think what we could have had is something a lot more deeper and a lot more bolder, Like, I feel like we could have had a show where, first off, these actors are actually playing their age. Make them 45. Adam Brody and Kristen Bell are both 45 in real life. Make them 45. Make this a show about middle-aged dating and the complications that come around that, and like how out of place they feel and how, disconnected they feel from all the dating advice they find online. But to further that, like, I actually think you could have done a really good job. This season should have been an exploration of Kristen Bell, Joanne, like actually trying to see what she likes within the religion of Judaism, right? Like, see if she can really be Jewish, see what she likes about it, and maybe actually bring up complicated, difficult subject matter. Maybe there's stuff that she doesn't connect with or she doesn't particularly like, and like explore that. Give us some like stuff to actually analyze and sit with and go, oh shit, I don't like, that's actually pretty complicated. Like, oh, maybe he gets offended, maybe she gets offended, maybe the families get offended. Like, we actually could have had a really interesting exploration into what it's like to try and convert. And similarly, we could have had an interesting exploration into Adam Brody and how conflicted he's feeling, but it just really just completely fell flat. I thought it was really, really lackluster. And again, these characters just felt like high schoolers. I thought the introduction of this character, Abby, this like influencer who was a previous bully of Joanne, could have been mined for some really interesting material. I think it's ripe for it, but it was ultimately really shallow and kind of like a lame inclusion. And that's honestly where I land for most of the stuff in this show. We spend a lot of time with Noah as he's getting to know this like new sort of take on Judaism, right? There's this like, it almost feels like a cult, but there's this new version of being Jewish that's invented by like Seth Rogen seemingly, right? So Seth Rogen shows up for a couple characters and it's kind of amusing enough, but the instant this plotline starts, exactly where it's heading, exactly where it's going. I will say it leads to probably one of my favorite moments in the season, which is when they both get home from having like terrible days out. Joanne has had a terrible day with her sister, and Noah has had a terrible day at work, and they both get home and they say they're fine to each other. That's a pretty good moment, all right? Like, I thought that was like decently well written and well realized, but everything else here is just really shockingly lame, Like, and some of the conflicts here, I'm like, again, I think these characters needed to be younger. or they needed to act their age a bit more, because this whole conflict where like Adam Brody goes, yeah, I'm going to take a night to go home and study, like Kristen Bell's reaction here, Joanne's reaction here of having a complete spiral and meltdown, I just thought was like so transparently made for like to be clipped on TikTok for Gen Z people to be like, oh my god, which one are you? I'm her. Whoa, you get what I mean? Like, it's just like, really, would a podcast host who is all about relationship advice really struggle this hard in a moment where a guy literally has an exam the next day and says, yeah, I'm just going to take a moment to study? Like, I just didn't buy it at all. On top of that, unbelievably silly plot lines. There was this moment where on a podcast, these are professional podcast hosts, Joanne starts talking shit on her landlord. And it's not even like a justified story. I actually would have bought it if there was a situation where she was so clearly in the right and she just got swept up in the moment. But she's clearly in the wrong. She's vomited in a pool. She's a rich podcast host. She's vomited in the pool. She's lied about it. And then she's angry because the guy correctly thinks it's her, and then she goes on a podcast, names him, talks shit about him, and then brags about not paying the money to clean up the pool. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, not to sound like the police, but like, honestly, I was like sitting there shaking my head this whole time. And then like Morgan leaks it, like Morgan goes and tells the landlord, like just completely unbelievable characters. And I know not everything needs to be super serious and super grounded, but dare I say, if the show wanted to be farcical, if the show wanted to be satirical, it should have really gone into being absurdist comedy. You know, everyone should be cartoonish. But this weird mix where it's trying to have you take things seriously, like the Morgan arc, where she's like, Joanne, you never pay attention to me. Like, you should have known I was dating my therapist. Meanwhile, we're sitting there going, where did this come from? I think the show really needs to focus on being a little more grounded. You know, I really didn't connect with this. I thought there was like literally no chemistry. I didn't find this show ever like sexy. I was never particularly interested in the romance. I just thought it was frankly really, really lame. I thought it was really, really lame. I will say occasionally some good writing shines through. I did like the moment where Sasha is talking about Esther. And he says at a certain point, like, oh, you know, I think he wanted to have like a serious chat with her, but she said she was on a phone call. But the home screen was lighting up her face. Like, the home screen was on. So he knew that she was faking a phone call. But he was so embarrassed for her. He almost felt pity for her. He couldn't call her out there. I'm like, you see, this is actually interesting material. This stuff. It's one of those shows where you're sitting there being like, I wish this was about the side characters more than it was the main characters, which is a shame, because I think Adam Brody is doing a fine job with weak material. But as a duo, right, the characters of Joanne and Noah are just really lackluster this season. And it's a shame, because I'm kind of interested in Morgan and Sasha, whether that will happen. I think the show has done a really good job of walking the line of having, you know, someone kind of have a grass is greener moment, look outside of their relationship, and not have you sitting there wanting to throw your iPad out of the room with moral disgust. Like, I think they've done a good job of painting Sasha as occasionally an empathetic character where you're like, oh, ouch, that would hurt. I think he has reason to not be happy in this relationship. And also not paint Morgan as a complete homewrecker. Minus, I will say, that moment where she pulls up in the car, like, they could have just had a phone call. Why does he need to go in the car with her? I know they were trying to get to this moment where he's like, oh, I'll record it, and like, oh, she's really suspicious, and ha 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 ha. But, you know, again, it's just a moment of adults acting like 15-year-olds. But I will say, yeah, I did really enjoy the problems that came up in Esther and Sasha's relationship. And I will give the show credit. I genuinely have no clue where that plot line's going. I don't know if he's going to wait around and get back with her. I don't know if it's then going to be a slow burn romance with Morgan and Sasha. But frankly, I don't think I'd ever watch another season of this show unless the Morgan and Sasha thing is more developed, or someone tells me that Joanne and Noah are interesting again. Because, I don't know, man, sometimes you have to look at that. You have to look at a show and go, okay, this show cost millions of dollars to make. You know, actors have said no to other projects to be on this project. Like, a bunch of talent has put all their brain power and efforts into this show. Sometimes you need to look at something and go, was that worth all the effort? Was that a story worth being told? And frankly, especially given season 1 and the material and the ground it already covered, I do not think Nobody Wants This season 2 deserves to exist. Like that, I said it, all right? I'm invalidating its existence. Like, I think it was a waste of time. And it was 5 hours. It wasn't even that long, but it's the only thing I've watched on my honeymoon where I'm like, I kind of want the time back. That was a little bit of a dud. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't upset too many people. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please consider getting a membership to this channel. For the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you get access to a weekly to fortnightly podcast where I talk about every single show and movie I've watched in a given month or in a given week or fortnight. It's a very small cost and helps the channel out a lot, and you get me yapping about tons of movies, new releases, old releases. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely day.